Hello everyone, it's Bobby4041. I'm back with another live model horse showing related video. In this video I'm going to talk about the Breyer molds that I dislike for live showing purposes and the reasons that I dislike them. Again, this is my personal opinion on these molds, so they would not be my first placing molds in most classes, but the opinions of all judges differ, so you might go to a show where these molds place wonderfully, and that's great, but if you do go to a show where they do not place, the judge might agree with my opinions, and this might give you a clue as to why they maybe did not place. It's just to bring awareness to some of the sculpting issues with these molds. If you have these molds, if you love these molds, continue to collect them. I'm not trying to dictate the way that you show or the way that you collect at all. This is just my opinion, and hopefully it will help you out to show better. So the first mold that I dislike for showing purposes is the cigar mold, a very popular Breyer mold. I dislike him because of a leg issue. If this was a real horse actually racing, he would be propulsing himself forward with his hind legs, and his front leg that is touching the ground would not actually be touching the ground. So ideally, I would like to see the front leg actually put on a peg and raised a few inches, but production-wise, I understand why this is hard for Breyer to do, because it would be very expensive and very difficult to put a peg in each of these horses' front foot. So I understand why it's not a thing, but that is my issue with this mold and why I wouldn't necessarily place it first as a thoroughbred, although the conformation for a thoroughbred is fairly nice. The next mold is also a thoroughbred mold. This is the Ruffian mold, and I dislike her also for another leg issue. If you think about this horse actually racing, and if all of her weight was put onto this one leg, her fetlock would not be as raised as it currently is. Her fetlock right now is in a position where it looks like it's almost just a normal horse, like just standing. But in real life, if all of her weight was on that one foot, her fetlock would almost be touching the ground. It would be weight bearing all of the weight of that horse. So that is my issue with this mold. I would like to see the fetlock down closer to the ground to actually bring the awareness that she is racing and all of her weight is on that leg. So that's my anatomical issue with this mold. The third mold we're going to talk about is the Icelandic mold. This is a pretty popular mold, and he was just recently released. I'm just calling it the Icelandic mold because I don't know how to pronounce the Premier Club model that came out on it. But anyway, I do not like this mold because it was pointed out to me at a judging clinic once that his pelvis is actually broken. So if you look down on him from an above angle, like if you look straight down on him from above, his pelvis should be parallel. They should be moving kind of parallel to each other. But instead, his are kind of moving like opposite directions. And it's hard for me to explain because I don't actually have the mold in front of me to show you. But it is indeed broken, and I also just find the sculpt a little bit wonky, like how thick his front half is and then how slim his barrel is, and then again, like chunkiness with his hindquarters, so I just find it kind of strange. I really do prefer the stablemate version of this mold way over the traditional, so that is my issue with him. And then the next mold is the Walking Thoroughbred, aka Carrick mold. Again, this mold has the same issue as the Icelandic. It also has a broken pelvis, which was pointed out to me. So the wings of the ilium should be moving in such a way that they are perpendicular to each other, or not but parallel to each other. And then in this case, they're moving in the opposite direction. So it again passes or fails the first test of my ABCs, which is anatomy. So I really wouldn't go any further with judging the mold. Oh, I also meant to point out, I also feel like, I don't know if it's just this picture, but his cannon bones, like his front cannon bones look really, really short to me. And I don't know if that's just this particular picture or if the markings are just making it, but his cannon bones, like these cannon bones are nice and adequate. This like caviness right here looks a little bit wonky to me, but his front cannon bones seem just a little bit like short as well on this particular picture. The next mold that I'm going to discuss is the Identify mold. I know this is a mold that is quite a fan with most people, but I just don't like it because I feel like he just lacks definition. in his overall musculature just kind of lacks definition, and his throat latch seems a little bit wide for me, like a little bit unrealistically. The width from here all the way down to there looks a little bit unrealistically wide to me. So again, just not one of my top placing warm blood type sculpts. But he is popular with most, so he is still like a nice mold if you enjoy him. And then the next mold is the Goffert mold. I did not like this mold, again, because it just seems a little bit cartoony and a little bit undefined in some places. Some places are a little bit over-defined in a way that it just seems kind of unrealistic to me. In addition, I don't like that none of his feet are touching the ground. Like, this one should be really flat, I feel. Like, this is kind of a weird position. And then also, I don't like that his neck, it seems if you followed this part of his neck, it would almost go all the way out like that and go here. And that's a very wide neck to me, that it just seems unrealistic and just throws me off anatomy-wise. So again, just not a personal fan of this mold, but you might see it placed at other shows. And then the next mold, as opinionated by many, is the ESPE mold. Again, I just don't like this mold a lot because his shoulder actually appears to be almost disattached from his body, like his scapula, and how like this is his scapula, but it just seems like it's pushed out and away from his body, if you can kind of see what I'm trying to communicate. So just not a fan of this mold. There's definitely better Spanish molds out there. Alborozo, the new Hermosa, like that one. Even Dustado is better than this guy. Okay, so we're down to just the last two, and this is a mold/model issue that I'm going to discuss. The mold is the Secession mold. I'm going to say the reason why I do not like seeing this mold in breed classes. An issue with this mold, if you look at it front on, is that the eyes are not actually like parallel to each other on the face. One of the eyes is a little bit higher than the other, which like would not happen realistically. And in addition to that, the mold itself, when you're thinking of judging a breed class, you are trying to judge a model as the epiphany of the breed standard, and this mold was made to look like a just recently given birth Arabian broodmare. So if you think about it, in real life you would not present a Arabian broodmare, who quite possibly might be aged even, like fairly aged, into a breed class for Arabians because they aren't of the correct, condition for the breed. Like a nice, really, like a young mare that hasn't been bred yet, or a really nice stallion would place far above a broodmare for this breed. So that's my big, this model should not really be shown, because in real life you would not show a broodmare, an age just given birth broodmare, because they are not the best of the breed. The best that the breed has to offer, if you get what I'm trying to communicate. And my other issue is that this particular model, Winona, she's fine as a model, it's great, but I see this model placed very often in the Appaloosa class, and I just want to touch upon that by saying just because a model has Appaloosa markings does not make it an Appaloosa. Appaloosa is a breed with the same conformation as a quarter horse or a paint horse, but with Appaloosa markings. And this model, as we've already discussed, is an Arabian mold, so I would not place this model as an Appaloosa ever. So please make sure that you understand the conformation and the breed standard and applying that to your model, and not just the colors, because many breeds can be Appaloosa, but they are not Appaloosa horses. So that's all I have to say about that mold. And then the last one that I am going to talk about is the S Just a Dream mold / Furano in particular. So this mold, not terrible. I'm going to preface it with not terrible. There's been an issue with the legs being a little bit flat, and like that kind of stuff being off. I mean, it's there, it's present. I have better Arabian molds. I like the Ashkar mold and the Weather Girl mold above this one, but she's not terrible. My big issue is this particular model for Rano. I really have to question why Breyer is adding stripes to everything nowadays. If they do a dapple gray, it seems like it has to have stripes on it, like abundant stripes on it. Point in case Indu from this year and how he has like a ton of bizarre face striping and like so many striping down his legs that shouldn't even really be there. But this particular model, as you can see, has like the striping along her neck. I don't really understand why that is there at all. And her dapples just stop at her shoulder. Like at the, you can see the line of her scapula and they just stop. And they don't continue onto her neck. And then my other big issue is this, and why the other side, it's stripes, and then on this side, it's dots. And I've seen it with every Furano that I've seen. So personally, I dislike this model because of all of these personal, like, paint issues with it. But that's just my thing. Like, I don't like this model in particular. The mold isn't terrible, but I don't particularly like this model. So that's the end of my list, my short list for models that there's a bunch of models that fall in here that are, like, adequate. They aren't my favorite, they aren't the worst, and then I have some molds that I prefer above other molds, but this is really, like, the bottom of the list and the molds that I usually would not place if it came down to it. And I hope that my descriptions of why I would not place them make sense to you guys. Just my personal opinion. If you agree with some of my opinions, that's great. If I've brought awareness to you on how anatomy fits into molds, then that's awesome. That's the goal. So please, if you have any of these models and you love them, continue to love them. I'm not trying to dictate the way that you collect at all. Collect what you love. That's my motto. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll have a tag video out soon, I think. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not. And have an awesome afternoon. Bye, guys.